Hey folks, how's it going? This is Cheryl Arkeson, your host on the Quilters Playcation Adventure Sewalong. We are here for the second last time in 2024 and our rainbow edition of this Adventure Sewalong. It is week 48 and I am really excited to share with you the block that we are making today, which you can just see over my shoulder. Let's adjust that a little bit, is a star. We're doing a little bit of a wonky star kind of thing, but for those of you who are really used to improv, it's going to feel very precise. And for those of you who might be new to improv, this might feel a little bit more comfortable. I wanted to be able to show you different ways of attacking improv. That's not very kind. Different ways of approaching improv. And there are ways to do it that, if you're a precision piecer, are going to keep you in your comfort zone a little bit, but push you just that little bit more out of the way. Plus, who doesn't love a star? We're going to make this wonky star. It fits in nicely with the rest of the quilts. You can see that over here. Blank spaces because I'm behind on that one. And so I made the one block in our monochromatic version, and I'm going to live with you today make the one that fits right there in the pastel grunge version. So let's get ready to go. I hope you are excited. I hope you are doing well. We're a few weeks out from Christmas for those of you who celebrate. So it's busy times for most of us. And even if you don't, every dance, music program, school, band, they all want to do their concerts, and there's events and Christmas parties, and it just gets to be a lot. My husband and my son both have really bad colds right now, so that has actually invited us to just chill the last few days, which has been kind of nice. My son is here in the room. He has his big headphones on. He's finished his school for the day, but he did not go to in-person school so he didn't make anybody else sick. So he's just gonna hang out in here. He asked if it was all right if he just stayed. So you might see him in the background, you might not. The dogs are sleeping. Got the puppy in here again, and they're not wrestling at the moment. So fingers crossed, they just keep napping and we're good. So let's head over to the cutting table. I'm gonna flip you around. My son just distracted me. He must be playing Fortnite and got very excited about something. So let's head over here. You will hear him cough in the background, fair warning. There's our ladies. We will say hello to them. And then we're gonna head down to the cutting table. I'm just gonna go grab the block. This is the one that I tested. So that's the mostly monochromatic version. We have all 6 fabrics in it. We get to play around with where and how much of each fabric that you want to use. In this block, what I did is I started with my light in the center and then my darks on the outside. In the pastel version, I'm going to do my warms in the center and my cools on the outside. You could flip that, you could make it random, do whatever you want. Remember, it's always maker's choice. Effectively, what we're doing is we're making a 9 patch. Pretty straightforward. We're going to have corner squares, a center square, and then these, where the star points are, is where we're having fun with the improv piecing. We're going to be using, whether you use scraps or fabric that you cut, we will be sewing stitch and flip triangles to our background piece, and then we'll assemble the whole thing as a 9 patch. Now, there is going to be a little bit of math involved. Just want to give you fair warning, because we kind of want to determine how big each of these blocks should be. Because when we put it together, it's actually a precise 9 patch, and I do find it a little bit easier to do it precisely. If you don't have your points of your stars close to the edge of the block, you don't have to be as precise, because then you have room to square up, right? You've got that good old wiggle room that I love. But today I'm going to demonstrate how to do it with a little bit more precision. But what will be the improv portion is everyone getting to choose where they put their fabrics. And then these triangles. You'll see, it's probably a little bit easier to see if I send it up. Not all the points are the same, right? They're not ending at the same part. That's that little bit of wonkiness that we get. And you can have more or less however you want to do it. So let's get to the math part, because there is some math. What we are going to do, and I just want to put this here because I want to be able you to be able to take a screenshot if you want as I explain this. So we're creating a 9 patch, but your 9 patch doesn't have to be your standard, everything the same size kind of 9 patch. We can play around with, maybe we are, askew in our 9 patch, right? Where we're kind of having bigger pieces on the one side and smaller in the other. The one that I have chosen to go with for the pastel is that I have it more like this. This is a little bit exaggerated, where the center is smaller and the sides are bigger. I'm going to show you how to calculate this however you decide to do it. It's pretty straightforward. There's sort of kind of a standard way to do it. So first off, what is the unfinished size of your block? For my pastel ones, that is 10.5 inches. Okay, now I want to subtract the overall seam allowance of that. So that gives me 10. With me so far? Now I have to divide that how I want, just remembering that I have 3 sections. So I can divide it perfectly evenly, right? So it's 3.333333. In quilting, that's a bit of a difficult number, let's be honest, right? My monochromatic one, those blocks are 9 inches or 9.5 inches unfinished. So take away my seam allowance, it gives me 9. I divided that into 3 sections, which meant I could have 3-inch pieces, and then I add my seam allowance back, and this lets me know how big to cut my squares. So it was pretty straightforward in that version. Right, just want to separate that out. It was pretty straightforward for my monochromatic version. With a 10-inch version, it was not so straightforward. So rather than try to do dividing it evenly, I thought let's play with it and have it be a little bit different. So I decided to go with a 4-inch section, a 3-inch section, and a 4-inch section to equal my 10. Does that make sense? Which meant I needed 4.5, 3.5, and 4.5 inches for my cut pieces, so that when I sew it all together, it's going to equal back that 10.5 inches. Make sense to everybody? So you could do different things here, right? Maybe you go 2, 4, and 4, and that's your 8 inches, or you go 2 and 3 and 5, right? Always just play with it. If you start getting into kind of differing, like not your standard equally divided into 3, right? 3 across, 3 down, all the same size on all the sides. What I recommend is draw yourself a little map so you know what size to cut each piece. I know this feels like it's going in the face of what we know about a lot of improv, but like I said, this is about easing into it for those of us who are relatively new to improv or not super comfortable with it. This is a way in. And for those of us who love improv and do it all the time, well, this is challenging us to work a little bit differently as well. So make yourself a map. So that's what I did with mine here, right? I know that I want my corner pieces to be 4.5 inches square and my center piece is 3.5 inches. But I like having this diagram because it lets me know what I need to cut these pieces at. So they actually need to be 4.5 by 3.5 here, which I haven't done yet, because I initially cut them all at 4.5 inch squares, which if you're not 100% sure what you're going to do yet, is a good thing to do. So let's trim that down. I'm going to keep those up there. And if you need me to put them back up at any point, let me know, but I will keep it there. So I know the reason I didn't cut them down is I want to figure out where I want these background pieces. So I'm going to do a little bit of a kind of test layout here. So I've got my center and I went with 2. You're going to need 3 of one color, 3 of another, which I've miscut. So I will have to cut that again. That's okay because I'll cut it the right way. And then, so you need 2 of one color and 3 of another. See what I'm saying here? So I'm gonna cut this one because I don't have it. And then we're going to have our triangles that we place on there. So Manuela Handmade is asking why I didn't use 3, 4, and 3 to get to 10. That makes sense too. You could absolutely do it. I just decided to stop, go smaller. Although now that I'm looking at it, I've realized I've completely done my math wrong, haven't I? I need to go 4, 2, and 4. Thank you for asking, because you just allowed me to correct myself. So let's make some of these corrections. This is not 3.5. This is going to be 2.5, 2.5, 2.5. There we go. Thank you, Manuela Handmade, for correcting me. And I'm just, because this is up here, this is going to get switched to a 2, and that's a 2. Apparently I can't math today. I'm trying to teach math to you, and I can't math myself. There we go. So you could go 4, 3, and 4, or 4, 3, 4, 3, like you suggested. I just decided I wanted the center portion to be smaller and the outside portions to be bigger. Make sense? Design preference, 100% a design preference. So let's fix my mistake. This is cut to 3.5 inches, so I'm going to trim that down to 2.5 inches. There we go. So we're going to start small. And then obviously I don't need this piece as big. I still need the height, right? According to my diagram, I need the height, but I don't need all that width. So I'm going to trim that down. And then I'm going to trim this one as well. So this star is just going to look different in proportion to what I have on the previous block. So do this purple as well. Yeah, you caught my math mistake. I appreciate it. I'm glad you asked the question. Although if I had just made it wrong, I probably would have just squared it up at the end differently, right? It's improv. We can make those kinds of fixes sometimes too. So now you're getting a bit of a better idea there, and I need to cut that green piece for here. So let me grab, oh, I already took my green out. I was like, where'd my green go? But I got it right here. I got it right here. So I'm just kind of a little bit off camera right here. So I need a 4.5 by 2.5. There we go. Cut my two sides. And then I will cut the other. And make sure we're good. Alrighty. Now we've got all my background pieces correct. Hoi, hoi, hoi. Got ourselves sorted. So then what I need to do is I need the triangles for here. Now I just took some squares of yellow and cut triangles. I haven't cut the triangles in my orange, so I'm going to go ahead and do that now. I like keeping the block out like this. Just helps keep me on track, especially if I get a little creative on where I put the points. So I'm going to cut some triangles here. I'm going to play around with the shape, right? I could just take a square and go corner to corner, but I'm not going to. I'll go corner to corner-ish with one, and the other one was a little bit wonkier. And then same thing with this side. I don't think that was even a square to begin with, so maybe I'll make this one smaller with a slightly different angle. There we go. It really doesn't matter because you can place them kind of wherever you would like as well. So now, just before I get sewing, what I want to do is decide where I want to put them. So I'm just going to kind of place them. Do I want to have kind of both yellow and orange on each star point like this? Do I want to have it like that, kind of going around? Or you can see what I did here is I did this one had two of the same, and then switched to the other colors here. I think I'm going to go this way here. So I'm going to do chain piecing here. I'm going to do all my yellows first. I want to make sure I put my yellows on the same side. When we're going to mix the two colors like this, I really want to have them both all four on the same side. So I know I'm sewing on the left side of my block. So what you want to do, I've got massive triangles here, but maybe you have little ones. And this stitch and flip technique is now what we're going to do. So let's just get all this stuff up here. I'm going to move my yellows out of the way. I want you to be able to see what I'm doing here. So I have my background piece, and I'm going to take my triangle and I'm going to place it on, and you could use a pin right here. This is when you want to get a pin that has a very small head. You can see that there, as opposed to, you know, something with a big head on it like that. If you don't have a pin like that handy, I highly recommend grabbing a needle instead to use as a pin, because it doesn't have a big head on it anyways. There, I've got a small one. And I'm going to place that pin. Once you're more comfortable with this technique, you don't really need to use the pin. You can just kind of fold it over. But place that pin, and it's kind of mimicking a sewn line. And because what I want to do is I want to make sure that when I flip this over, it covers the corner of that background. I don't want this, right, where the background still shows. I want to make sure I'm covering it over. What angle, how much you cover, all of that is up to you, but you want to make sure it's covered no matter what. Then when you're sewing and you get to the pin, just remove it. You're placing that pin on roughly on the 1/4 inch line. So that it lets you know, yep, that's where I want it to be. So see, I was just kind of eyeballing in there. Eyeballing is fine, just be prepared sometimes, and I do it myself all the time. Just be prepared that you might have to adjust things. So I'm going to change the angle on this one. I've been going quite high up. I'm going to go low, just for some variety here. Now obviously my triangles are quite large. For what I'm doing, that's fine. It's not like the scraps won't get used. I'm going to kind of cut the difference here. Yep, go like that. That is the sick child you can hear in the background. Good times, good times. Grabbing another scrap to go along the way here. Okay, so this is what we have. We have all these background pieces with their triangle sewn on like that. First thing you want to do is I always just kind of do a quick, not even a finger press, just fold it over, double check that everything is covered. Right? These are massive triangles. It's not really a concern, but sometimes you're using smaller ones. And so you want to double check with all of that. Then you're going to go and press those properly. I like to press them towards the triangle, just so that the triangle pops on the finished quilt block. But again, maker's choice. I just find it easier to do it that way. You'll also see in the next step where we're trimming how nicely that actually helps you. So I chain pieced all of them. I'm going to press them all at the same time. And now I need to trim them. Why do we need to trim them? Well, because we've got so much extra fabric here that we don't need. And I find it's a lot easier to work with if we trim as we go. So I remember the size of my pieces, 4.5 by 2.5, and I'm going to go ahead and cut off this excess here. And then before I completely finish with that, I have that remainder of the background behind here. I want to cut that off. If you don't cut that off, is it the end of the world? Of course not. But when we add the other triangle, there's going to be a part here that has 4 layers of fabric, plus seam allowances, if you don't cut that off. And so I like to cut it off and get it out of the way. And now I have effectively what I would refer to as kind of a new background piece, ready for the next point of the triangle. Why do I do this trim first where I cut off the edges? Because then I know it's the right size. Because if I go ahead and cut this first and then go to trim and I'm a little bit off, right? Maybe I missed a corner or something like that. It's going to be a lot harder to get that triangle piece lined up to cover again. So it's just really kind of a easier way to approach it. And then when I'm making these trims now, right? So let's see, if I take this and I cut that background off again, and then, let's just say it ends up looking like this, but I won't know because that piece is gone already. And when I try to sew another piece on, I don't have that reference to make sure I'm cutting off the corner. So it's just my habit. Obviously, I'm much bigger here on these pieces, but it's my habit to always trim the sides first and then trim the seam allowance. And I just use the seam itself as my 1/4 inch guide. So that way, if you were a little bit off, it doesn't matter, right? Because you've just made it all back to what it was before. And then once we've done all 4, we're basically going to repeat the process for the other side. Right, so I just have them here, make sure they're all kind of laying in the right way, and then I'm going to repeat the process with my orange. So my orange is going to cover over this part of the yellow. You can try to match it up, but just for ease, I would not. So I can lay all of these out, make sure I have what I want, and then they're all ready for my piecing there. Okay, so put it over, test. Maybe I want to have some, see, I folded it over and tested, and I have some of my background peeking out, so I can't do that. You could cover all the way over that bottom portion. Doesn't matter what you cover over of the other one. Obviously, if you do your 2 star points the same fabric, it really doesn't matter. But here I'm totally fine with the orange covering over the yellow. That's just going to be part of the design. Okay. So again, just play around to get what I want and have some fun. I really like these stitch and flip triangles. I think they, actually I'm going to switch that. They add a lot of interesting dimension because you think on first glance that you have this like really precisely pieced block, and then you realize that it's just that little bit wonky, which is kind of fun. And then having variation in where, right, having larger triangles than I need so that I have variation in where my triangles points end up is fantastic. The other great benefit of this technique is that you're not going to cut off any points, right? So if you're someone for whom the cutting off of points stresses you out or bothers you, do this technique, because then you'll never lose a point because you're always far away from the edge. So again, we're just going to double check quickly before I head to the iron. And then repeat that pressing and then trimming process. So I'll just show you pressing this time. Right, I have that there. Just flipping that over and pressing. It's not rocket science. Set the seam and then flip it over. Here that I am out of water in my iron. Conveniently, I have a child in here. Hey, Nikki, can you fill that up, please? I have a child in here. I can make do some work. He does not look impressed with me. I'm gonna need it for the next round. Thank you, son. Just pull my iron so that gets nice and warm. And then we'll repeat that process, right? We need, sorry, I was getting confused there, 2.5 by 4.5. And then everything stays the size we want it to be, right? By doing it this way. And then trim off what's behind. There we go. And by using both colors in our star points, we're going to get some really interesting movement with this block, almost like a pinwheel effect happens, which can be quite fun. There we go. Can you believe we're almost at the end? I can't at all. This year has flown by. It really has. I'm not happy with the passage of time these days. It's going a bit quick. Okay, last one. Now we just assemble like a standard 9 patch, right? It's pretty easy. Get it together like a little 9 patch. Just before I do that, I'm just going to double check everything is where I want it to be, right? All my colors are as they should be. Haven't made any mistakes, so I'm pretty happy. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to sew these two together, then I'm going to just, we're going to chain piece these two columns. So these two, sew a couple of stitches, sew these two, sew a couple of stitches, and then sew these two, take it out, and then add that third one onto it. So now is when we have, you know, that pretty standard 9 patch assembly. It doesn't matter that all my pieces aren't the same size when it comes to this assembly. As long as I keep them in the order, it's all good. Obviously, if you are comfortable and prefer it, go ahead and pin those pieces, but this is what I mean by, right? I've sewn them with some chain piecing. Now I'm going to go ahead and add this column to it. So I'll just take the pieces one at a time. Again, keeping everything in order so I don't have to worry about it. And then we're almost done. The final pressing, or I guess we should press and then sew those final seams, hey? Apparently my brain is not working. I hope I'm not getting the cold that they have. Truth be told, I think I might have already had it because I had a runny nose last week. Okay, so I'm going to press these just to finish up. Now I'm going to make my life easier and I'm going to press some out and some in. So I'm going to press these ones with my larger squares in the corner out, and then I'll press the center square in and then out again here. And what this will allow me to do is to nest these intersections, right? When I go to put these together, I can nest these seams, which allows the block to lay flat, allows me to assemble it quite nicely and easily. So we'll just sew these last two seams, and typically when I'm doing this kind of assembly, I will sew the two seams and then go press. So line up the end. Then in lieu of pinning, I get started, make sure my needle is down, And then I get this seam lined up. I can feel it with my fingers that we're nesting nicely, but you could obviously pin this first. And then I just hold that. So fingers as pins. Then when I get to the next one, I do the same thing. And then go for that. And 99% of the time, I get a beautiful intersection. And that other little bit of the time, I don't worry about it. See? Nice intersections there. We'll do the same thing on this last seam, and then a final press, and we are done. So got it started. And then finish up. And then for this final pressing, you can press open. You can press to the inside, to the outside, however you want, really. I'm going to look at the block, and I'm going to go to the outsides, right? And then this way it kind of reflects what I've already pressed. So essentially I'm thinking of it as that I've pressed towards my corner blocks. And there we go. I'm going to give a little spritz of flatter, and I just got to give a shout out to Sharon at Pudding Yarn, who gave me a new bottle of flatter after I was complaining last week that all of mine were getting low. She came for Fika Friday, which is my open house at the studio every month, and she came and she brought me a little treat, which was so nice. So thank you at Pudding Yarn, Sharon. It was so kind of you. And there's the block. So let's look at the two of them side by side, just to see the differences, right? So we did the all the way around. You get that nice kind of twisted pinwheel sort of effect when we alternate the different colors versus kind of doing the pairs here and the pairs there. But I did the same idea here. Let me just put it this way. The same idea with the background, right? 2 here, 2 here, then you get 3 along one side and then 3 around the corner. So you get some kind of movement with all of that, but have fun with it. Play with your layouts. You can do some really fun things. So there is one more time. If you need to screenshot that, the way to do the math. But you could also send me a note or comment on this video. Say goodbye to the ladies for the week. And I'm going to take you back over here to the design wall. And we'll place these on the design wall. So this one's going to go here. Obviously I've got to fill in the blanks there. And the star is going to go over here. So let's move that so you can see everything. There we go. There's the star fitting in to her final spot. And look at that. One more block left to do. Just one. Next week is our last week on the Quilters Playcation Adventure Sewalong. What a ride. It's been a saving grace for me. I hope it has been fun for you. I am already thinking about what I might do next year. I'm on the fence. I don't know. But I did have some ideas. So let me think on it over the Christmas break, and you will find out at the beginning of January what I have decided to do. It's been a lot of free content from me, which I am happy to provide, but I may have to think of some alternatives. I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know. Just bear with me and we'll figure it out together, okay? So thank you, everybody. This has been Cheryl Arkeson with the Quilters Playcation. This is your Adventure Sew-Along, week 48. 48. One more week to go, and we will wrap up this epic year-long adventure in improv piecing. Have a great week, everybody. Thank you. Take care.